I settled the case for like 300,000. I was like, listen, it's a lot of money, 100 grand. I'm good. I can coast on this. I can start traveling. But I always had this entrepreneurial itch. Like it was never going to be a question, am I building a law firm and scaling?
Well, hello and welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the straight truth on how we are rapidly scaling a family law practice. You know, over the past 9 years, we have grown from 0 attorneys to 25 and doing over 15 million in revenue. And my purpose here is to document what's working, what's not working, with hopes that you can take that and you can recontextualize that for your practice and shorten your success curve. And I'm excited for my guest today. Tom Tona and I met a few months ago when we became LinkedIn buddies, commenting on each other's stuff. And then Tom reached out and said, hey, dude, let's get on the phone and meet. And so we did that. Great conversation. And through that, I started peeling back the layers of Tom's story. And he has an incredibly fascinating story of where he got to where he's at today. He's the owner of a very successful PI firm and collections firm, civil litigation cases in New York area, Long Island area. Many years of just grinded out, kick in the face, fighting experience. I can imagine you've got a lot of war stories there that you could share. And some other cool stuff that we'll get to in the call. So Tom, I don't want to drone on about you. I'm going to let you tell us about you and your story. I like to start, if you can, maybe give it a highlight where you're at now, and then let's go back to like the origin story, like the comic book origin story. You get bit by the spider as a little boy. What happened?
All right, awesome. Listen, first I want to say thank you. I started listening to your podcast. James Joseph turned me on to you. James is a matrimonial attorney. And while your show is very matrimonial heavy, I get a ton of value out of the business stuff that you're talking about. It applies across the board of anybody who's running a law firm as a business. So I think that, you know, what you're doing is awesome. And it's now in my rotation of gotta listen to this podcast weekly type of thing.
Thank you. High praise. I appreciate that. And your podcast equally.
Oh, I
very
appreciate
informative.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you want the version of the bit by the spider story. So
yeah. Let's go back there.
It's funny how threads, to me, weave their way through your life, right? So I was always 5'7". I used to say 5'8", joking around with my wife because that's what my license said. But she said, yeah, you're not 5'8". So I was always about 125 pounds to 150 pounds. I graduated high school, I was probably 125 pounds. I was severely bullied, right? And at the time, honestly, you don't realize what that will do to you. But I learned to fight. And I learned to fight a lot. And it actually ties into what I ended up doing because I found myself in the law, mostly because my dad pushed me. I wanted to be a writer and moved to Italy for 3 years. And he was like, yeah, no, you got to learn how to make money. So he was like, pick a career and do that. So I chose to go into the law as one, it was primarily motivated. I wanted to be financially successful. Little did I know that's not necessarily even the easiest route to financial success. But I went into the law and then I said, well, what am I going to do? And I naturally gravitated towards litigation, right? Personal injury specifically. And once I found myself on trial, I knew I was home. I was like, I need the fight, and I need the fight to defend people who can't fight for themselves. I often was the guy that jumped into fights in the schoolyard when people were being bullied and got the crap kicked out of me while they ran away. And I'm like, you could help me out a little bit, you know?
As you're stepping in for them.
Yeah. So I took a lot of beatings because of that.
Take me back to those moments. I mean, I want to kind of drill in a little bit here. Do you remember a moment where someone said something and you can remember those words today because they hurt so deeply, or they did something to you that just shaped your psyche to give you that fighter's mentality that you have?
You know, it wasn't said, it was physical violence, right? It was kind of like, I went to a blue collar high school. I was the first person to graduate college, let alone law school, in my family. And primarily the high school I went to, it was a rougher time to be in high school, right? So at that high school anyway. So it wasn't necessarily one specific thing anybody says when you're being picked on or bullied. It's you become a target for whatever reason. And the only way to really deal with that is to fight. Win, lose, or draw, to fight, right? So it was seminal in creating who I am, because I'm always up against odds. As a business owner, you're always up against odds. As an entrepreneur, you're always up against odds. As a lawyer, many times you're up against odds. Like, you just have to be willing to step into the ring, as they say, and fight. So it wasn't necessarily something somebody said. You can hurt people with words, but it was more physical violence that I was, for some reason, it found me, right? And it might be just that I had a big mouth too, like I had a big mouth when I was a kid, so.
I'm sure that did not contribute at all, Tom.
Yeah.
I can see you sticking your nose in the stuff that wasn't your business. But your dad, you talked about your dad. What was your relationship like with your dad?
Still to this day, and he passed 3 years ago, closest person to me. Formatively, the lessons that I took from him, he was a blue collar guy again. He worked in retail, didn't make a lot of income, but was brilliant with money. And when he passed away, he left a very significant estate to my mom because he was a saver. He was an investor. He never lived beyond his means. And my brother and myself, both the same way. Like, I'm not a spender. I'm an investor. I'm a saver. I always want to plan for the future. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy myself. I do spend money on certain things, and I can tell you what those are. But my father was the primary influence of that financial, economic education.
Yeah. So when you told your dad about you getting beat up and bullied and all that, how did he advise you? How did he handle that with you?
Okay, there were two primary influences in this realm. My father and my Uncle Donald, who just passed away. He was my godfather. And we lived around the corner from each other with my godfather. And I came home the first time I was bullied, and they both sat me down and they said, listen, you come home again without fighting back, and you got to deal with us. And my uncle was 6'4", lightning fast Vietnam veteran, Purple Heart decorated Marine, and my father was 6'1". So here I am, 5'1", and I was adopted. So like that kind of changed the calculus physically. I didn't inherit big genes, right? I knew that no matter what I did with a bully, it was never going to be worse than what I was going to come home to if I had to tuck my tail between my legs and tell them I slunk away. So it just wasn't even an option. It wasn't even an option.
Yeah, you've carried that mentality obviously into your business and your practice, and I'm sure the courtroom as well. Just real quick, I have a 7-year-old little girl. Her name's Bella. Girl's making fun of her on the playground a couple months, maybe 3 weeks ago. And Bella, she's got 5 brothers, so she hit the girl and pushed her down, and the girl got up and did whatever. And Bella got in trouble. So we got a call, and I'm like, my wife told me about it. I'm like, honey, I'm like 51% against this. I guess there's a better way, but can I say this in a podcast? I mean, I think the girl had it coming, and she's only 7. It's not like she can really do a lot of damage to her, but I want my kids to be able to defend themselves, and that may mean taking a swipe sometimes. That's okay.
Yeah.
Hope my wife's not listening. She would not agree with that.
Listen, I tell my daughter all the time, she goes to a school where, we talk things through, whatever. And I'm like, look, if anybody's in your 3-foot circular radius and you're not comfortable, you defend yourself. Don't worry about what'll happen. I'll handle the rest because, girls or boys, bullying is catastrophic. As somebody that was bullied, I can tell you firsthand, you do get suicidal. Like, you're walking around in fear for your life. Your outlook is horrific. And that's one of the reasons I went into martial arts. It was my only coping mechanism. Thank God, Yeah,
I read that on your profile, and I know you and I bantered on this a little bit, but I just got to put it out there for everyone to hear this. There are many martial arts, and there are some that are like a step or notch or 5 notches above the others. And one of those, that is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's one of them. And you're a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I don't know, I'm gonna let you share this, but my understanding is that you just can't show up and in a year and a half test and get your black belt. It's like a 10-year, many sore, broken whatevers along the way, kicks in the face. Every black belt I ever met has like floppy ears because they have just been wrestling and putting their head into chokeholds for 10 years. So real quick, this isn't about BJJ, but tell us about that.
So I was a lifelong martial artist. I started when I was bullied, right? So I started at 15. I took karate. I got my brown belt. I then went to college and I didn't train for a while. I then took Aikido for probably about 6 or 7 years. I got my brown belt. I was supposed to go up for my black belt. And one day, I always wanted to learn how to defend on the ground, because actually being in a lot of fights, most of them ended up on the ground. And the worst beating I ever took was at the hands of a wrestler who outweighed me by about 40 pounds. And it's like feeling like you're drowning, like you're in the ocean and you're just being dragged under. So at 40 years old or 38 years old, I had the epiphany, I'm going to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the most challenging martial art, bar none, other than maybe, judo is really hard and Muay Thai is really hard. I started going to Jiu-Jitsu schools. I found the Jiu-Jitsu school that really felt like home to me. And I was like, all right, I'm getting my black belt. That it wasn't even up for discussion. I was like, this is a lifelong thing that I am finally ready to get my black belt at the hardest thing I can choose.
Wow. How old were you again? 48?
I was 38 when I went. Okay. I got my black belt 10 years later. I still train. I don't train the way I did when I was 38 because my body can't take it. And I trained like most guys who had too much testosterone where, instead of training smart, I trained really, really hard. I broke everything you could break, basically. But look, it was fun. It was really fun when I trained that way. I don't train that way anymore. Now it's like a Saturday roll with other black belts, and we got to go to work on Monday, and we run businesses and run schools. A lot of them are doctors, so we're a lot smarter now.
Fascinating. So let me just segue, if I can, over to your choice in the law. Now, you went to your dad and said, hey, I want to go, I think you said Italy to write. And he's like, nah, you got to make money. Walk us through that and what led to you going off to law school.
Okay, so I love to write. I wanted to be a fiction writer, right? The great American novel written in Italy, romantic by the sea. My dad disabused me of that and said, listen, man, that's not the way we roll in this house. You're going to continue your education and you're going to go straight through. So I did that. I chose law school over medicine because I didn't like the sight of blood, quite honestly. And now I look at the cases I work on and I know just as much medicine, if not more, in the chosen field I'm in. I probably could have done medicine too. I'm glad I went into the law because I got to combine my passions of sticking up for the little person who doesn't have a voice against a big multinational corporation, right? So I chose the law. I thought I wanted to be a transactional lawyer because I was always fascinated by real estate development and owning a skyscraper. So I went into real estate law, and in a year, I thought I was going to literally commit Harry-Carry if I had to keep going in transactional because it just didn't jive with who I am. My disc is very assertive, aggressive, oriented, and sitting in an office all day doing contracts was like death to me. So
does not fit you.
No, not at all. So
for 2 hours, I can tell you that doesn't fit you.
Yeah. So a buddy of mine, I credit him with it. I was working at a real estate firm. This guy was a young trial attorney. He just opened up his own practice, and I see him coming in. He'd be like, oh, I just settled a case for $200,000. I'm leaving for the day. And we would go out to lunch a lot. He's like, look, you need action. You got to get into personal injury. And his name is Herb Auger. I'm still friends with him to this day. And Herb runs a firm out of Carolina. I run, the New York firm. And he was right. Like the minute I got to a PI firm, I was making nothing when I took this job. I knew nothing about PI, but I was on trial a week later and I won. Because I just didn't sleep for a week. I just trained for the trial and got everything prepped. And I was done. I was like, this is my sweet spot. I know what I want to do when I grow up.
Wow. You said something a second ago that I didn't understand. You said commit Harry-Carry. What does that mean?
Suicide. I wanted to kill myself. Like it's Harry-Carry is what the samurai used to do when they felt disgraced. They would jab themselves in their diaphragm and drag the knife diagonal and they would kill themselves.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of Harry-Carry, Chicago Cubs announcer. I grew up in Chicago.
Oh, sorry. Harry-Carry.
No, I was like, wait a second. I don't know anything about that.
It's like this formal ritual that the Japanese samurai did when they felt disgraced.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Respect to that, by the way. So, okay. Back to the law firm. So you realized you had this trial, very little time to prep for it, but man, you found Tom, this is you. What happened next? I
got very aggressive about personal injury and becoming an expert.
How old were you and how many years out of law school were you at this point?
Sure. I was only about 3 years out of law school. This might be 1997. right?
Okay.
So I graduated in 94. I bopped around to 1 to 2 jobs. This was my third job. And I got to this firm.
So you're at your third job in 3 or 4 years. So you're not having a ton of success at this point.
It was my third job in about 4 years. There weren't the resources they have now where you could take a disc test, right? And know, oh, my personality's not suited for estate work, right? I knew I didn't want to do what you do. I knew that there's no way I could go into matrimonial law. Like that was just not my composition. So when I got to this firm, it was 5 partners. I learned a lot of lessons of what I wanted to do and not do from a business perspective there. But what I did do is I took their inventory that was sitting on a shelf and I was like, give me anything you want to give me. So they divided it in half between me and another young guy. And we just started ripping these files. We would take him to trial. I would take him to trial. He wasn't trying cases at that point. But I also learned negotiation because my old boss at the time, my old mentor, was like, look, man, your job is to lawyer, which means generating payroll every 2 weeks in a PI firm, start settling cases that need to be settled. So I just, the one message to anybody listening to this that's just starting out in the law is you got to be willing to get your hands dirty. You got to be willing to become an expert so then you can do the business side of it if you choose or further yourself as an expert.
What point did you decide to start your own practice? What led up to that? Good
question. So in 2001, my main mentor was a guy named Don Sullivan, who's still around. Don was this salt of the earth guy. And he was very much, him and I clicked from a personality perspective. So he was my direct report. There were 4 other partners. A lot of them aren't even alive anymore. He was really the only guy I clicked with because he was a salty guy and he was kind of in your face about stuff. And he pulled me aside one night. We were out at a dinner and he said, listen, I'm retiring. And I know how you are with the other partners. I also have been watching you and I know that you have about 40 cases at this time that you've originated. Here's what I would propose. Go out on your own, take the files, cut the firm back a third on every file and the disbursements when the case is settled. I thought, well, first of all, I went home and I was like, I think I just got fired, but I was not married. I didn't have a kid. I owned a condo at the time. So in the day,
by the way, that's a stand-up move that Don did there.
That's who he was. That was my mentor.
Yeah.
He was a stand-up guy. I love him to this day. And he was a stand-up guy. He was like, look, one, I know you don't get along with the rest of these guys. And even though you make them a ton of money, they're going to make you miserable. And he was like, this is what's best for me and my family. I got 2 years left. I get a government pension. So it's time for you to fly, man. I'm telling you, go out on your own. So back in the day, I was still drinking. I don't drink anymore. I haven't had a touch of alcohol for 14 years, but back in the day, I was still drinking. So I broke out the scotch and I started to flesh out. It wasn't even an option. I was just going to open my own practice, right? Like that's where I started to take out the pad and with the bottle of scotch and I started fleshing out my business plan. And that was how it was born. It was basically, I had 40 cases all in various stages that I knew I could generate more income than if somebody was going to pay me. But I also knew I'm entrepreneurial. I can sell and I can run a business better than what I just observed for the last 5 years.
So of those 40 cases that you originated, does that mean you sold them or does that mean they came to the firm because they heard about you and your reputation or both?
I'm a marketing guy. I always have been. Right. So if I had to pick one skill that was my superpower, it was sales and marketing. I've been selling stuff since 3rd grade. So literally since 3rd grade, I've been selling stuff. So I learned to sell very young. And so when I go into meetings with people, I walk out with business. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter because I listen, because I ask good questions, and I'm a problem solver. Yeah. I build a better mousetrap, and you know what happens. You build a better mousetrap, and then
they feel it. They feel you care, that you want to help them get
100%. 100%.
I'm going to get to the firm in a second, but if you don't mind, I'd like to know more about the alcohol issues. So, what was going on in your life? Did you get into the point where you were just drinking too much? Like, what was your relationship with alcohol prior to going clean?
Okay, so I grew up with exposure to it. My parents were from the Rat Pack generation. Frank Sinatra and all of those guys, right? So maybe some of your listeners won't even know who that is. But so when you grow up in a family where they're all from Brooklyn, they're all Italian, they look up to the mobsters in the movies and the entertainment sector. So when things are good, they break out the alcohol. When things were bad, they broke out the alcohol. So it was a natural progression up until the point, and I think it's one of the most insidious things in our society right now, because they've legalized that substance, and it's literally the most destructive thing on the face of the earth. And there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. They can't make it illegal again, right? So that failed. That was a failed experiment. It was a slippery slope because when I was much younger, I was handsome. And then when I was a young attorney, I was handsome with money. So, and then I had my own business and I was on top of the world. But there's a fine line between the life of the party and the, I don't know if I could say I don't want to curse, but the a-hole. And often you don't know which you are when you're the party guy. I had a daughter who 6 months in, I was at a barbecue at a family. I remember when it was. I was at a barbecue. I was at a family event and my wife had to drive home and I woke up the next day and I was like, that's the last time. Wow. I've never touched alcohol since, because I should have been able to drive my family home. And I couldn't because I had too much to drink at that barbecue and it would never happen again. And from that day, I never drank again because I realized it's an insidiously fine line between fun and complete and utter tragedy. And I can't tell you the number of DWI cases I work on now, dram shop cases involving brain injury and wrongful death that are tragic. It's tragic for the families. It's tragic for the clients. It's also tragic. I've deposed people sitting across a table in jail. And I talk to my wife about it a lot. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Like every time I sit across from one of these guys, I go, they didn't plan on this. They just had a substance abuse issue, right? So yeah, I talk about it pretty candidly. The reason why people ask me like, what do you attribute success to? Choosing the right person as your spouse, right? Like they don't teach you that in law school, but if you choose the right person, they're going to further your career, your business. You choose the wrong person and you're a matrimonial attorney. You're going to give them half of everything you built, you know?
Yeah. I had a conversation with my 18-year-old son a week ago. He was taking me to the airport and I said, Jack, you've got one major decision left in life. The most important, 10 to 1, more important than anything else. And that's who you choose to marry. So make a wise one and take time, use time as your best friend. To just wait on that. So
100%.
Totally agree with you there, Tom.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so you started the firm, got your 40 cases, and now you're off and rolling. What was it like? What happened next?
So it was interesting because I was like, they don't teach you this in law school. And it was good, you know, it's different when you're alone with a laptop, right? If you settle a case for $300,000, that $100,000 can last you. I never forget, like my second month in, I settled the case for like $300,000. I was like, listen, it's a lot of money, $100,000. I'm good. I can coast on this. I can start traveling. But, I always had this entrepreneurial itch. Like it was never going to be a question, am I building a law firm and scaling? Right? And scaling is like the new sexy word everybody uses. I was self-aware enough to go, well, you don't just start out scaling. Most of us, Jeff, don't just start out scaling. We build foundationally and we build incrementally. And I said that as an inside joke because of what you revealed to me yesterday on the podcast about how you did it. You had a plan to be 8 figures from day one, right? I wanted to learn. I grew very quickly because I'm good with money. I think you have to be good. One of the roles as a business owner is you got to be very good at resource deployment. Money and time and people. And how you deploy those 3 resources strategically will tell me everything about how you can or cannot build, scale, or grow a firm.
Right, yeah. I think that's the CEO's most important job is resource allocation. Once you get to that
100%.
level. Just resource allocation. I write that down I write down something every day. And what's one of the things I write down is what would a great resource allocator do today? Because I want to keep every day bringing myself right back to that point. I got 9 hours. How am I going to allocate those resources? I have, resources within the firm. How am I going to allocate those? So at some point you decided to hire or grow into the point where you end up hiring your first attorney. What emotional or mental breakthroughs did you have to get through to do that?
Before I even hired my first attorney, the most pivotal hire, I think, and now I've been doing the Entrepreneurial Operating System for going on 18 or 19 months. The single most pivotal hire I ever made to this day, and it will never change, was my integrator, Janira Aleszczyk. I give her shout outs all the time, but she's still with me 24 years into this. 24 years. And it started out, we were both kids, right? We were both kids.
Yeah.
So there would have never been another associate or another hire made correctly, because quite honestly, she has grown into this high level operator that allows me to step into the CEO role. So that was the most pivotal role. I didn't really have apprehensions after that hire because our skills are so complementary. And it's just been a blessing, because how many visionaries are out there that are still looking for an integrator like that?
Yeah, they're hard to find. So unpack that, the EOS concept. Sure. You're doing it, and you're doing it very well. What is that? What's an integrator? What's a visionary?
Sure. So the EOS system, it's a system, right? I woke up in January of 2023. On New Year's Day, I have this ritual. I get up at like 4 a.m. and I get up at 4 a.m. I do a workout every January 1st. And then I sit down and say, what am I going to do this year that's going to be special? And I said, I'm building an 8-figure law firm. Right? Making the first $1 million, yeah, that's hard, it's challenging, great. Making the second $1 million, yeah, that's hard, it's great. But that was going to be the special jump off point of like how many people build 8-figure law firms, right? So, and then I said, okay, what did I do really well to this point? What did I do that I should never do again? Because I learned my very expensive lessons. And one of the things was I needed a system. So right around that point, I had been looking at it. I had read Gino Wickman's Traction already. I've been talking about my existing coaches with it. And I purposely chose EOS because I didn't want a law-based system. I wanted a business-based that applied to everything, right?
Yeah.
So the Entrepreneurial Operating System has 6 components to it, which you know, because I know you do EOS, and it's people, data, and a host of other systems that come into play, right? Ending in Traction, it was very painful the first 12 months, man. They do not warn you about how painful it is, but it's magical when it starts.
Part? Was it giving up control of certain things, letting go of the line, as they say, or?
No, okay. That was easy for me. That was easy because I'm like you. I'm a natural delegator. For me, delegation is second nature. The more I can let go, the better, right? The hardest thing for me was the people component, because they simplified it so much, it was undeniable. And once you crystallize your core values, oh my God, like people start dropping like flies, they'll self-select out, right? And so we scaled up really big in the first 12 months because we had all of these things going on. And then there was a self-selection out. And then there was people we selected out. And what I loved about it though, is it wasn't like the old days where, do you remember your first termination? Like your first time you had to terminate somebody?
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Was it an emotional thing for you?
I felt bad, really bad for the person, right? But I felt kind of good for the team because this person was a bad fit. I mean, just, character-wise wasn't all there. So.
Yeah. So what I loved about the system is it's not emotional. It's based on data, right? And the data says you align or you don't align with the core values, and then you get it. You want it to have the capacity to do it. And by the time you get to that point, that person's either got one foot out the door or completely knows they're not in alignment. So there's it's not hard feelings like, I want to be on good footing with people after the fact. But when I rolled out EOS in January, I adopted the statement, the train has left the station. We're on a bullet train. Like I feel like the law firm right now is on a bullet train to 8 figures, repeated 8 figures, and probably scalable 8 figures like you are. And I just said, look, it's not personal. If these don't align with you, we're good. And if they align with you, we're great. So EOS, while it was painful, man, it was just, when it all clicked together, was something special, man. To watch it start to unfold now is like crazy. Yeah.
Does that lady you refer to, does she do all your L10s? Does she run all those?
Yeah. So I still attend the L10s. We vary. We have a 4-person leadership team right now. We're going to be adding to it in the next, there's always a question, how quickly do you add people? I believe that in our firm, we're going to have human resources / your growth director would be part of that. And also I believe that marketing should be a part of that right down the road, whoever the heads are. And if I have a managing attorney, they'll be a part of it. I did learn, that was another valuable lesson, was don't put people on a leadership team too soon. give them 90 days to 180 days to start adapting, have them working with coaches beforehand so that everybody, again, it's about alignment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have a really special chemistry right now on the leadership team. So Janira and the other parts of the leadership team, they're all very versed. They run them. I don't run those meetings. They run those meetings.
Level 10 meetings is what they're called for those that's a new term for you, meaning that you want that meeting to be rated a 10 as in like quality and value added at the end of the meeting, right? So L10. Your executive leadership team has L10s. Does everyone in your firm attend a L10 for their department?
One of our departments already started rolling it out. The other one, we just are starting rolling it out. So that was one of the rocks for this quarter. So like, I think by June 30th, all of the firm will be attending L10s. We will also be doing quarterly conversations because you start to realize, like when we rolled out the EOS to the entire team, I asked at the end, what is everybody most excited about? What is scary to everybody? And universally, quarterly conversations. I was shocked. Not we're going to make more money, not we're going to become this mega firm. They want communication on a quarterly basis. They were all, everybody said that. Everybody said it. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah. I forget what they call it, but you do that analysis as well, where you once a year go through everybody in the whole entire organization and you ask the question, are they a value fit? And then competency fit. And there's one other thing they look at, and that's kind of a real sobering kind of repositioning of people on your bus, so to speak, putting them in the right seats.
Yep. Do you do staff surveys or net promoter scores within your staff, like some kind of survey with your staff?
Yeah, we do. We don't do an NPS because that's just that one question. So every quarter we do a pulse survey where we ask the same 6 or 7 questions. And then we'll like supplement that with something that's more timely that's going on, like an initiative or something like that. But I did a podcast a few weeks ago with our director of HR, which we call Team Growth, where I went through all those questions, how we use it. But it's when you ask the same questions every single quarter, you get a benchmark and you can watch that over time. Like if you're starting to slide in an area like work-life balance, for example, okay, hey boy, we're out of balance here. We got to go back and like address that. And so we take that data back and that goes into our planning meeting for the next quarter on our ELT level. And we'll talk that through and say, okay, this is what the team has told us. They're not doing well here. What can we do to shore that up? But man, getting your culture right, that trumps strategy, that everything, that beats everything. If you can get your culture right, it's really
100%. Really it's actually, that is my primary focus. Like I have seen magic happen at the culture level second to none. If I had to pick one thing, and it's funny, Jeff, I started out, I hated human resources. I hated dealing with it. And my coach at the time, Patrick Wilson, said, you just haven't learned it. They don't teach you this in law school. Let's reframe that mindset. And I spent 10 years primarily studying personnel, human resources, and culture. Wow. And we've been doing staff surveys anonymously. We don't do them as frequently as you do, which I think that's brilliant that you're doing that. But once a year, we do Patrick used to run them, and then I just did it with the Inc. 5000 survey. Inc. runs a very real staff assessment if you apply for the small business best places to work, right? Yeah. And I paid for the results. And consistent with the last 6 years, we have ranked 93 to 95% engagement rate, right? And so
that's super high.
I actually got emotional about it because like when Patrick tells me, listen, I survey 75 law firms across the country and you have consistently scored number 1 in engagement, I'm killing myself to show this team. I like that Gary V mindset of you work for them, they don't work for you. Yeah. I have really embodied that. And so, it's an emotional response to open up an independent, anonymous survey, 93% engagement rate. That's special, like to me, that's special. I'm killing myself for that. So I have proof of concept of all of this stuff,
Yeah. Business can be so emotional around that. It's the one area that you're combining your life's work with people that you love. And both of those together, that can really rip it out of you, can't it?
Yeah. And Wickman wrote another book that I think is brilliant for anybody listening to this that is a law firm owner. It's called How to Be a Great Boss. Have you read that?
Yeah, it's that orange cover book, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I thought
Yeah,
it
I
was
have the book.
brilliant. And he's like,
It's
look,
short, too. Very short.
It's very short. And he was like, look, just own that you are the boss, and you do have to give leadership and direction. And that's what people want when they work for you. They want to be led well. So I love to get that once a year, and maybe doing it quarterly is the way to go. I just have to figure out how to implement it.
We do it anonymously too. I think we just use like SurveyMonkey or something. We make it super simple, email it out, and it goes to teams. So only thing we can identify is what team they're on, but our teams are big enough that we want them to feel real safe to answer those questions, right? Not like, hey, you said this about me, you're going to retribution because you criticized my leadership or something on their teams.
Yeah, and just really quick on that note, I'm sorry to step on you with that, but in that Wickman book, he says, pay attention when people give you critical or negative feedback, right? That means they care. They're actually engaged. Now, listen, I don't want, if any of my team listens to this, please don't go negative on me, but it means they care enough to give you feedback, and they feel trusting enough to do that.
Yeah, I think that last part of what you said is brilliant. They feel trusting enough. You've done something in your engagement with them, your interaction with them, that they trust you enough to say, Tom, you suck at this, or you hurt me when you did this. Right. If they're willing to tell you that, my gosh, that is a gift above all gifts. Savor that, hold that, right? Yeah, that is awesome. You know, also in that book too, he makes the point about all problems are the leader's problems, right? Every problem in your firm today, that's on you. 100%.
If the person is doing a bad job, did you train them? Did you pick poorly? Did you onboard them at all? Right? Yeah. Like Bill Biggs, you know who Bill is?
No, I've never heard of him.
Bill works for a company. If you check him out on LinkedIn, he's big on LinkedIn, but if you check him out, he works for a company called Vista Consulting. I've heard him speak several times at all of the conferences I attend, and I have stolen a phrase from him, so I have to give him credit for it, which is, every problem is a leadership problem. I go to work with that mantra, and I fully believe what you just said is every problem is a leadership problem. And if you look at it that way, there's no more blame, there's no more anything. You're like, where did the system fail? Did I not have a system? Was the system not followed? That type of thing. So yeah, we're 100% in alignment with that, but it takes great humility to lead from that place. Yeah. To say, I suck at 97% of the things, but the 3% I'm a genius at, I'm a genius, right? Or a wizard or whatever it is, you know what I mean? So
yeah. So when did you first look inside your soul and realize that you had leadership abilities, that people were going to follow you? Do you remember that moment or that time in your life?
You know, again, it goes back to kind of when you're a kid. I don't know if you experienced it, but you know how when you get together with groups of kids, if you were always the one leading, you kind of have natural leadership instinct. Now, you don't have training or any of that, but there's a certain part of it that's innate. And I think that it has to do 100% with mindset. I just very early on was like, I'm going to be a terrible employee. I'm meant to own something. And there's a difference. I'd say it all the time on LinkedIn. There's a difference between being a lawyer who owns a firm with a shingle. You're an owner. That doesn't mean you're a leader, right? So there's a difference when you talk about ownership versus leadership. In leadership, people follow you. They're not scared of you. They follow you because they believe in your vision and your mission and that of the company. And so I don't remember the moment other than I never knew anything else about myself.
Yeah. If I were to go to your team, anonymously, of course, and I would ask them, tell me about Tom's leadership. Why do you follow him? What would they tell me?
Okay, so I can cite the survey from the Inc. 5000 survey. I literally just got it back a month ago.
Perfect, timely question.
Yeah, and what it said is there's a 97 or 98% belief that leadership puts the people first, that leadership has the best interest of the people in the firm, you know, as a primary construct, and also that 100% of people that answered the survey believe that the firm is not only going to achieve great things, but completely execute on their vision and their mission.
Wow.
So that's what you will hear, because that's what they told me.
Yeah. Well, that's a big vote there. What are they going to say your weaknesses are? Because, you know, as leaders, they're talking about our weaknesses all the time. So we know
Yes.
they all talk
100%.
about it. So when they're talking about us, right? What are they saying?
Right. So I think that if my leadership team was to talk to you either anonymously or not, because they're so close with me that they're not afraid of me. Like I pick people for the leadership team that will call it like it is. Like you're not going to make it on leadership if you can't match me for muscle, right? So
I love that about you New Yorkers as well, by the way. That's something you've got over as Midwesterners. We have Midwestern nice out here. And so it's hard to find that. But I talk to you folks from New York and it's like, you're straight, like right at it. Sometimes you can be rude, but you can be very, very candid, which I like. Not you, Tom, but other New Yorkers.
Right. Well, I think, look, one of our core values is kind candor, which was from Gary Vee. I had an epiphany when I read that book, 12 and a half he wrote, and it literally changed the nature of my practice because I was like, that's who I am. I am that New Yorker. I'm not rude. I want to always have people be kind. No one benefits from sugarcoating truth, right? From the candor of, hey man, Sally, you're not doing a great job. Here's our standard. We need to work on this. I think people shy away from kind candor because they're fearful, not how it'll land on somebody else. People that work in our organization, they know we will tell them like it is. They don't have to go to sleep at night wondering if they're failing or succeeding. They know, right? So yeah, so if my leadership team was talking to you, I think my biggest learning point, which it's only happened recently in, let's say, the last 6 months, was learning that to be the most effective version of myself as a leader, I have to learn emotional restraint and communication restraint.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Right? The old me, I'm an emotional, high energy guy.
Yeah. Yeah. That takes some authenticity to just like talk about that publicly, because that can, you could feel like vulnerable and weak to have to admit that. That's really good. So one more question along these lines. What are you working on right now in your leadership growth? In
my own leadership growth, I finally figured out, this is going to sound bizarre because I'm 55. I was at the EOS conference and I figured out who I was. 100% complete picture in the business space. And it's this: now that I've reached the CEO level, and if my firm only needs me 20 hours a week, who am I? How do I fill that void? And I realized I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have had multiple opportunities that sprang up, not coincidentally, just this year. A software company opportunity for software I created, right? 8 years ago, I created an innovative software for one of the silos of practice that now there's market demand for. And I have a team. Here's what I figured out. Nothing's going to happen if I don't have the right second in command, right? Because I'm a visionary. I have probably undiagnosed ADD, and I have a tech person who, she's a wizard. I called her up. I said, listen, do you want to partner up with me on this? I'll give you equity, but you have to just understand who I am. And I told her everything bad and good, all my challenges, all my strengths. And she's like, I did that just recently with another tech company. Yeah, I'm a born integrator. I had her take the test, actually, the visionary integrator test that they have on their website. I'll end up using EOS in that business as well when we grow it. But me figuring out that, oh, wait a minute, there's a need for vision and visionaries, and I'm not good at everything else. And in order for something to succeed, I'm gonna need that other piece of the puzzle. Otherwise, nothing will get off the ground. So, that was interesting to me. So for me, this is the epitome of entrepreneurship for myself.
Wow, yeah, interesting. So I wanna be respectful of your time, Tom. I know you're in the mountains on vacation, all that, but I've got a couple lightning round questions. I didn't prep you for these for the sake of everyone listening here. This is going to be spontaneous Tom here. So here we go. And then we'll close up. So what quote comes to mind that's meaningful to you?
A friend of mine said recently over lunch, you know what's not on anybody's headstone in the cemetery? The stuff they owned or their net worth. And that has resonated with me because for me, at this point in my life, it's all about relationships and experiences with my family. I can buy my family a lot of nice stuff. I don't spend a lot of money on a lot of things except experiences.
Wow, that's awesome. What resources helped you grow in the past year? Could be a coach, could be anything, conference.
Look, I will just say it's not just the past year. It's the last 23 years of doing this as a business owner is investment in education for myself. millions of dollars. In my team, hundreds of thousands of dollars invested. So the biggest investment you can make, everybody wants to get rich quick, invest in yourself and your team.
Yeah, they can't take that away. You coach with a number of people, I believe. So who are your coaches, and are they in particular areas of your life that they coach you in? Or
I started to assemble like what I call like the Avengers of law business, right? The business of law. So I have Patrick Wilson. Patrick Wilson is affiliated with a company called Atticus. Atticus was instrumental at the fundamental building stage of, I wanted to get to $1 million. How do you get there? They teach you the 4 components, the 4 pillars: time management, marketing, finance, and people. Once you pass that stage, and I was with them for about I'm still with them on and off. But I still coach with Patrick Wilson. I have a guy named Dan Feynman, who's my fractional CFO. He's a ex-banker for 30 years. He has his own business, and he does succession planning and financial. He's a wizard. So he really helped me get into the financials of business. He's also a UCLA educator, and he teaches at the annex at UCLA. I have a industrial psych that's part of our team she's freelance, but when people hit mindset issues, or I see somebody bumping up against that ceiling, or I'm like, look, to go to the next level, you got to kind of improve certain things. Mindset wise, it's out of my pay grade. So I consider her one of our coaches. And my EOS implementer, Mitch York, who's amazing, right? Like he's really good at what he does. He's hyper effective. So those are the people primarily that I rely on from a coaching. I do attend a bunch of masterminds every year, that type of stuff.
Wow. What mastermind do you get the most value out of?
The most value, if anybody's listening to this, no offense to all my other friends that own masterminds, but hands down, there are 2 I recommend to everybody. It's John Fisher's mastermind, which is quarterly. There's no contract. It's like $1,200 a quarter, and he does them all over the country. What's cool is they travel. There's something magical about being in the hot seat, and like if you go there with one issue that you're stuck on. Normally I go with 2 or 3 because I'm an overachiever, and the magic doesn't happen. And the magic doesn't happen in the seat. It happens after the processing starts to occur in the weeks after. But dude, it's a needle mover. It's a needle mover. Wow. That one, and for anybody that wants more business of law stuff, Craig Goldenfarb, 7-figure attorney, the guy just delivers the heat. Once a year he does it, and he really does know what he's talking about when it comes to scaling a law firm. And he's got a multiple 8-figure law firm out of Florida. He's one of the largest PI firms down there.
Last question here. What is something in your life that most people don't know about, but that you're proud of?
That I'm proud of? That's a good question. You stumped me on that. Look, if I was going to point to anything, it's just my why. My why is intrinsically tied to my family, right? Like that's my why. My daughter, my wife, and the legacy I want to leave with them, right? That's all that matters to me. I don't want them to be like, Dad was a workaholic. Now, you ask my wife, she'll tell you I'm a madman. You're a madman too if you're an entrepreneur, right? Like it's just who we are. But my wife's like, I wouldn't change anything about what you do, because when you do it, it's magic. And I'll share something really quick because I know we're wrapping up. But last quarter was like a gut check. I had a vision and I had to go all in, and everybody below me was terrified, including my leadership team. And I just said, guys, you trust me, and we've been here before. If you trust me, just trust me. And they did, and the magic occurred. I got proof of concept the first quarter of this year on a vision that I sunk in, $500,000 to $750,000 into the vision of this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to become. And we did. We did. So a lot of people don't know, like the whole why behind it is to the legacy I want to leave for my daughter and for my wife.
Yeah. Well, that gives me chills there. Well, Tom, how could someone get a hold of you? And you have a podcast, Lead Counsel Podcast, which is exceptional. So I will point that out and plug you for that. So how else could they get a hold of you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. It's Thomas Tona, Tona Law, right? And, I answer my own social media. I do all my own stuff on LinkedIn. I think that it's a great resource, so that's the easiest way. They could also go to my website, tonalaw.com, and, get a hold of us there too.
Yeah. That's spelled Tona, not 2 N's.
Tona. Yep.
Got it. Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks for taking time out of your vacation. I know looks like you're having a lot of fun up there. So I appreciate you taking time for us today. And
this was awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I love your podcast. And again, I'm happy to share it. I think that it's awesome. So.
Oh, thank you.